Hey there, friends. Welcome to Montessori 101, a live show from Child of the Redwoods, all about the magic of Montessori. We believe that every child deserves a Montessori education. I'm Aubrey Hargis.
I'm David Argus. And whether you're here with us live, welcome, or you're watching a replay, or maybe you're listening to this as a podcast, we're so happy to have you here. And if you'd like to know more about our work, head over to childoftheredwoods.com. And we have a bunch of freebies and other information, and you can get to our full podcast catalog, all kinds of stuff.
All right, so today we have a special topic. We are talking about how to make homeschool work when you are also working at home. And we're going to do this by spotlighting a member of our community. So you get to hear what a day in the life of a Montessori parent looks like in practice, a parent who is working at home and in an office at the same time that they are homeschooling. So today's spotlight is on Stacy. Stacy is a mom of two living in Florida, and she is an alumna of our Homeschool of the Redwoods primary program.
Yep.
She describes herself as a work from home mom, learning about Montessori as I go. So she had submitted this, a tricky but not uncommon work situation.
Yeah.
So she works home part-time and from an office the other 2 days out of the week. And she says, and I'll quote here, the 3 days that I'm home with the kids, we try to keep a decent routine, get outside as much as possible, hit the library once a week. On the weekends, we try to do an outdoor activity with the kids, either a new playground or a hike. She says, my husband is in school full time and works part time. So our house is super busy all of the time. I think that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Sounds familiar. She says, meanwhile, on her office days, she leaves the kids with family members. So awesome. She says, but they writes that they are not in a Montessori home. Still, she says she's organized their own home to make it convenient for the kids so they have a decent Montessori setup and a daily routine.
That's right. This situation just really more and more common. I think especially since the pandemic.
For sure.
A lot of folks have found themselves, or more folks, I should say, have found themselves in a situation where they're either working partly or more from home than they were before. There's sort of a movement. It seems like it might be kind of reversing a little bit now, but definitely for a while. And of course, a lot of schools were closed. And so parents all over the US were put in a position to homeschool in some way or another. Now, they may have just been using whatever the public school was through a web software or something like that. But there was a lot more of that integration of the home and the school that people sort of realized. And, some people just decided they liked homeschooling better.
Totally.
And haven't necessarily gone back or looking for ways to make that work. But what's interesting about what Stacy wrote, and I think is reflected in that, is I think we often have a perception that homeschool families, there's always one person who just never works outside the home. They're just full-time parent. And that is certainly something you find. I mean, there's plenty of folks in our community who've done that. We had that off and on during periods of our life. But most commonly, I think, or more commonly, you see situations where one or both of the parents are working either part-time or full-time. And it's actually just so much more common than it used to be. And this is sort of an open question, like how exactly do you make this work? How exactly do you balance the homeschooling with the at office time? So we wanted to kind of explore that in a little bit more detail. Like, how do you exactly make that work? I know for us here, we run a small business, and we work all the time. Like a lot of small business owners, we're basically always working, but we're also full-time homeschoolers. And so our kids are always busy. They're either in an online class or we're having to drive them somewhere for something in the city. And it's challenging, right?
Yeah, we're giving lessons at home.
Of course, exactly.
Often it looks like a little bit of work time, lesson to a kid, a little bit more work time, lesson to a kid, lots of work time, putting the kid off for a while.
Yeah.
And then totally stopping work and attending to the kid. Like it's just off and on like that. And I think I expected, because I was working from home, like this in our small business while you were still at an office.
Hmm.
And I mistakenly thought that once you started working from home full time with me, that that suddenly I would just like have all this extra time
Yep.
because then you would be doing half of the homeschool work, but it hasn't really worked like
No,
that.
definitely
In
not.
fact, the more, we want our business to be successful. And if you
Sure.
want your work, whether it's at an office or at home, or you own your own business or you don't, if you want it to be successful, whatever you want to be successful, you gotta work for it, right?
Absolutely.
And our culture tells us that we need to be working a prescribed number of days per week and a
Hmm.
subscribed set of days per week.
Hmm.
We say like a good American worker, I can speak for the United States, works Monday through Friday. So it's a 5-day work week. And you usually, I know you got up and went to work earlier than 8 o'clock in the morning
Oh, for
most
sure.
days.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then you're supposed to stay to work until you come home to essentially have dinner, maybe in the evening. And most workers these days, working outside of the home or not, are usually beholden to their mobile phones, or their computers, even when they're at home, right?
Yeah. I mean, and let's be really clear. I mean, this is about folks who might have more like an email type job, an office job.
Hmm.
There are lots and lots of people who work in the service industry,
Yep.
or they work, in a shipping center, or they're doing other things like that.
Or
And
food
food
service,
service is
or
physically
Mhm.
laborious. They're tired.
Yeah.
Um, or they work in medical
Hmm.
when they have unusual hours,
Yep.
maybe. And so it's difficult, right? So whether you're like us, small time, small business owner, and you're working all the time, but you're also trying to homeschool, or you're in one of those situations where you don't have control of your time for one reason or the other, it could feel sort of overwhelming. But what we have found, and we've been at this quite a while, and it worked with a lot of people who are in the homeschool community, it is doable.
Hmm.
And I think the key, I mean, for me, the first key is that you have to have a focus on that schedule and routine. So if you're going to have a very, very complicated come and go schedule, maybe you're home Monday, Wednesday, Friday, maybe then the kids are with somebody else Tuesday, Thursday, or something like that, or they're in a school program part of the time, and then at home part of the time. The key is the schedule, right? Otherwise, it could just feel like the kids just feel out of control. I mean, why is that? What do you think it is about the need for the schedule and that stability that's so important?
Yeah. So the need for a balance between routine and unstructured time is innately human. We all crave it, right?
Yeah,
I know that when I'm off of my routine, I'm not feeling like I'm really in control of anything, and I am not as efficient, and I'm not as kind, and
yeah,
I really depend on having my bit of structure, whatever I decide that is going to work for me.
totally.
And so it's the same with children. I think even more so, that growing up as children, they don't have a lot that's within their control, but it is very comforting to them to be able to predict what's coming next. And so the way we do it in Montessori is we make what's coming next really obvious to
Hmm.
them. And so that is something that can really help a work from home parent. In our primary course, we talk during our first exploration week into rhythm and routine, we talk about visual schedules. So even something about letting a way to let your child know what is coming next, it
Yeah,
just can make them feel so much better.
yeah.
And so when think about that, and combining it with this idea of working at home, how we would be using that is we would be saying, okay, like, does my kid know when I'm going to be working and when I'm not working?
Whether you're working from a home office, your bedroom, or actually outside of the house,
Yes. And
you
so
know.
that is really, I think that's a key point to setting them up for success right away. And we even did that when you were working outside of the home. We would say, remember, today is Sunday and tomorrow daddy goes to work in the morning and daddy will be gone.
That's
And
right.
it will just be me and you and your little brother. And so just saying that ahead of time, and maybe even reminding them in the morning, daddy went to work already. He's working and he will be home at this time. It gives them a context, to put their time,
Mm-hmm.
and it gives them a point of contact to look forward to. They know it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're outside in the office, like kind of set it up, ahead of time, which days or which hours you're going to be gone. But if you're working from home, it's also important to let them know when you're going to be working too.
Right.
So, for example, you might say in the morning, first, we're going to work on the movable alphabet together, or we're going to play the banker's game together, or whatever. I'm going to show you a lesson. We're going to cook in the kitchen, whatever you're going to do with your child.
Mm-hmm.
Set it up. We're going to do this together. And then mommy is going to sit down at her computer and do some emails, and let's talk about what you are going to be doing during this time. Do you have an idea? And you can involve your child in like what they want to participate in doing during this time that you'll be working.
That's right.
It doesn't just have to be like, and I have a coloring sheet for you and it'll be at the table, or you're going to be, I'm just going to turn on this
video or something.
Video, right?
Yeah. Here's an app.
Here's a cartoon, right? Keep you
app.
busy while I'm doing this. So you can set it up for very, much more successfully if you give your child a range of things that they can do, some choices, and then you're very, very consistent about it. Something that worked a lot for us that we still do, that we'll talk about a little bit more later, is co-working.
Yep.
So we'll kind of delve into that later, but I'll just say, like, just kind of keep in your mind, this image of you're going to set up your expectations. Your child is going to know when you're working and when you are available completely to them, at their disposal. Because I think it's really this dynamic of, I just need to finish this last email. But, mommy, like, daddy, like, and they're tugging on you physically, like they're yanking your arm and you're trying to type or, right? We've been there, right? You're trying to type, or like maybe you're on the phone trying, you're talking, you're trying to have a conversation with somebody.
Absolutely.
I remember when we were at the very beginning of Child of the Redwoods, before it was even called Child of the Redwoods, I was starting to do some of that kind of outreach work, interviews and such. And I had the kids with me full time. You were in the office a lot, know, and so I remember it was very embarrassing sometimes, to be on the phone trying to be a professional. Like, yeah, I'm a mom, but I'm also a career lady, at home. And then in the background is like,
totally.
And so that is a moment where our stress goes up. And I remember there was this time that I was really trying to finish this thought process. I was trying to write this thing or trying to complete this thing, whether it was a blog post, I don't know what I was working on. But I just ended up like, between one of our kids was just like this constant back and forth. And I just snapped. And I remember turning and yelling, like, get away from me, or something really horrible. And like physically like pushing them away. And I remember just the look on my child's face, just like complete dismay, realizing like, oh, I crossed a line with mom. But I just felt so guilty afterwards. But, when you think about it, like, whose fault was it, that we ended up in that situation? It really was mine. At the time I felt like, nah, it's not my fault. Like, this is just parenting, right? But now in retrospective, I can say to those of you who are in that place with little children right now, like, there are things that you can do. There were things that I could have done to make it more successful. I could have set a timer, so that my child knew when to expect. When the timer goes off, mommy is going to be done, and I could be consistent with that. Or I could, just say, like, when you are doing this activity, then I will be engaging in this. Or I could have just said to myself, you know what? This is not as important as attending to my child right now.
That's right.
So I have to be the grown-up, and I have to be the one to stop this and pause it, even though it doesn't feel good right now. Make sure my child is okay. And then when things are smooth again and his needs have been met, then I can get back to it. So like kind of a restart. But it can be very, very frustrating trying to work at the same time that you're also attending to children at home, whether homeschooling or not.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's the thing about with the pandemic, a lot of folks were put in a position to work from home. I was still working outside the home at the start of the pandemic. And like every other office around here, closed. And so we were all working from home full time, and you just suddenly saw a lot more of your coworkers' personal spaces than you had ever known before. Like, oh, I didn't know you had children, and boy,
Mhm.
they're very noisy, aren't they?
Yeah,
And oh,
right.
yes, I also have children, and they're also very noisy. And yes, here comes one
Yes.
right now in the middle
Right.
of this call. Please.
Now, I will say, when that happens during our live sessions for Child of the Redwoods, we love it.
It's a little different,
Real
yeah.
life is always like, children are always welcome at Child of the Redwoods.
Of
So if
course.
you've
Well,
got
I
a,
mean, when we do our
yeah,
community events, we invite
yes,
people are always
yes, and I
welcome to bring their
love seeing
children.
the babies' little faces
Of
popping
course.
in and the
Well, we're
kids
doing
running
this
in and
work
out of the
for
room. I
kids.
mean,
Yeah.
I love it, love it. But let's talk about, like, on the parent side, it can be frustrating or embarrassing.
Yeah, that's right. It can throw you off. It can make you, because our expectation, we do not have our society is not family friendly. It's just not. I mean, I know it's sort of an take it for what it's worth. In my opinion, we have not set up our society to support people and families. It tends to be focused more on other external forces. And so, as good workers, we are kind of in the mindset that, oh, my child is disrupting this really important thing. And that really important thing is like, I'm having a technical meeting, and it is my job, I'm just speaking like from experience, right? So it's my job. I'm supposed to be the boss or whatever. I'm supposed to be participating or whatever I'm doing. And then here comes my son, and he needs something. He wants a glass of water, or he just wants to know what I'm up to, or he was just peeking in. And I'm like, no, 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 get out, go away, go away. This is important. And that is the mindset that we're kind of brainwashed a bit to think it's the wrong way. It should be the other way around. It's just what you said, like, oh, wait, I'm going to stop this unimportant thing that I'm doing so I can actually focus on the thing that matters, which is the well-being of the child who I need to grow up and be a healthy member of society and a good producer in his own way and find happiness and take care of me when I get old. So like I need to kind of invert that. And for that's sort of the way the we kind of evolved to be, and we're really fighting against that nature. So
Mhm.
what I think is interesting, as we hear in Stacy's story, and we'll talk a little bit more about it in a second, and what we're describing here, and I think part of that discovery of the work-life balance and homeschooling is there's a movement, small, but I think growing, of like people saying, I want to reorient my life about things that actually are important, not just that I'm told are important.
We actually have a saying in our family. It goes, family first.
Family first. That's right.
Family first. And that's end, period.
It's not easy to
And
do.
sometimes family first means I got to make money for my family so that I can,
Totally.
we can support
Yeah,
ourselves.
this isn't pie in the
Right.
sky.
So,
I mean, it's not to say like, well, we just drop everything. I mean, we all make mistakes, and
yeah.
but absolutely. Okay, so a
Right.
little bit more about Stacy. She tells us that in the morning, she gets up with the kids, come to bed because dad leaves before they wake up, and they get a good snuggle in. And after that, it's time to brush teeth and get breakfast ready. They have their own get ready area.
Mm.
That's a great thing, right? The
Hmm.
kids know where to go for their spot. And after they are done cleaning up breakfast and playing in their area, they change their clothes after breakfast while I catch up on emails and drink my tea. And after that, we head outside to play in the yard. I'm doing my best to include walks around the neighborhood, but we haven't quite gotten there yet. We have a snack outside and then either read or do some yoga before lunch. Now, she wrote this a few months ago. I bet
Mhm.
they're at the point now where they are making it around the block or whatever
Probably.
that walk is. And that's actually the piece, I love, there's a couple things in here that are great. And the first one is it reminded me, we used to have, when our kids were smaller, now they're so big they just own the home. But when they were little, they would have their own tables in places and little dish sets. It was in a Montessori way, and that's where they would eat. And they would have this as a spot, and it really helped give them a sense of control over the area. It also helped sort of create a place where you could say, go and own your place and do your cleanup, and I'm going to be over here doing my emails or cooking or whatever else I'm going to be doing. And it's not a perfect solution, but it does actually kind of begin to create the sort of dynamic that you were describing. The other thing that I liked about what she wrote in here was this about the exercise. I like that she says we go outside to play. So she has this open-ended excursion, but then she says they're also trying to make a time to go outside together and do adult kind of structured exercise.
Mhm.
And I think as adults, as parents, we often don't give ourselves time for the latter, or we try and make it a separate thing. I'm going to go to the gym or go to the treadmill, if you even have time for that kind of thing. And instead, we take the kids to the playground, and then maybe we play with them for a little bit. But playgrounds aren't for big people, so we tend to wind up sitting on a bench. Not everybody, but some of us do at least. Uh, and it's important, I think, to make a ritual of exercise, family exercise, more structured exercise, a part of it. And we were very conscious about that. When we came
Mhm.
here to California, when we moved here several years ago, we got into outdoor hiking, or hiking. I guess all hiking is outdoor, but we got into hiking in the headlands and things because it's so beautiful and the weather's really nice. And our kids were pretty little.
Yeah, well, it
Um,
started in when we were in Virginia. So
Yes, but it really, I feel, in my mind, I really associate us kind of getting into a habit of doing it
yeah.
regularly here. You're right. We always would spend time outside, but going out on trails and finding trails and things became more of a habit. And the kids were little.
Yeah.
They were pretty little, and it wasn't super easy. But over time, it's really paid off, and they are now nature lovers. They love to
Mhm.
hike. They love to be outside. They love to camp. It really paid off. So it was an effort to sort of say, like, we as a family do these sorts of exercise things together, and they're a little more structured. It's not just run around playground time, and you're going to kind of like stick with it. But in the long term, it really pays off. So, I was wondering, what do you remember? How do you remember us making that work?
Making the hiking work.
Yeah, I mean, what is it that you think? What do you think the secret was?
I think that so first of all, we were talking about this, thinking about working from home and integrating in this balanced life of nourishing yourself as well. I guess I want to start by saying that by engaging in exercise like this, it is going to help you to deal with the stress of working from home and in those
Which
moments.
is
So,
why
so
it's
that kind of
important to have that, other than just like, I'm going to take you to the playground and let you run around. We're going to do
yes.
something together because I
So
need this too.
I think that probably the first thing that we did was we made it intentional. We said, like, we're going to do this as a family. This is important to us. We want to go hiking and we want to exercise. We want to do it together. We want to do it as a family. It's kind of like one of our core values is like, we are a family that hikes,
Yeah.
right? But our children were too little to hike in the very beginning, as at least as long or far as David and I would want to. So I think the way we started was really like back in Virginia. You were working mostly in the office. What we did was we didn't necessarily take nature hikes all the time, but we did a lot of urban hiking. And so
That's
we
right.
definitely made a point of, uh, getting in our car, driving to a place where we could like urban hike around Washington, D.C. to go to the museums
Yeah.
or going to the zoo, or, it wasn't necessarily nature all the time. But we were not hesitant at all to put our children in carriers. So I remember even when our oldest was perfectly capable of like walking, it's like 4 or something, he was still riding in a stroller because we were going for such long
Hmm.
distances. So we made sure that we always had like a big jogging stroller with us, or an easily transportable stroller where
Hmm.
somebody could sit in there. Sometimes they both sat in together. Sometimes I
Yep,
thought it
that's
was
right.
fun. And always the baby carrier, right? As long
Oh,
as we
that's right.
had a toddler. And when they outgrew the baby carrier, you put one on your shoulders and then like we pushed the other.
That's
And
right.
we started kind of in this intentional way of like, you don't have a choice. You're going to get in the stroller or in the baby carrier, or you're going to be held or put up on dad's shoulders or whatever. And we're going to go for a long walk. And so it was kind of this expectation that we were going to do it. And we
Hmm.
started right away, even though our kids weren't equipped to do it all themselves.
Yeah, it's kind of like conditioning them in a sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then mostly while you were kind of working at the office, I would go with the kids regularly to nature areas. We'd go to these nature centers with friends. And at first it was just like we all just stand around in a forested area. It was like a no playground, just like a little nature area. And we would just let our kids kind of wander around.
Hmm.
And Maria actually makes a point about the benefits of allowing children to walk as long as they want.
Hmm.
So we wouldn't end up going very far on these little trails. Like there were trails that went further, but we would maybe end up like going a fourth of a mile on
Yep.
these, but our children would be doing constant walking. They would just like be walking over here, look at the frog, and then coming back over here, and then walking down the trail and walking back, and then coming over here, get a stick, and then walking back, and then up in the tree for a little bit to hang out in the tree, or,
Yeah,
or
that's right.
circling around the stump over and over, or up
Yeah.
onto the stump and down on the stump. And I have to say that during those excursions, it was hard for me to get exercise.
Same.
Yes,
Yeah,
because
that's
we
right.
were just like standing around a lot while they were
That was a time
they
of
were
extreme.
running.
That was a time to practice
It
patience for me. I
was, and
remember
it was hard.
that.
And so I think that's also probably why we were so emphatic about, like, sometimes we spend time in the woods and it's just for the kids, and we don't place any expectations on like making them go a distance, right? But when we want to have our exercise and it's
Yeah.
going to be a family event, we take the equipment that we need in order to carry or transport the kids until they are ready to do it themselves. And when they were ready to do it themselves, they let us know. Like, they were scrambling to get out of the baby carrier to go and like run down the trail for a bit before we would pick them up again.
That's right.
Or they were like in the stroller, and then they would leap out of the stroller and abandon it and like race down the path for a while until they were exhausted. And then we were there with the stroller again when they were ready to rest. And so bit by bit, we just extended this process, but it was very, very intentional. And I think whether you are choosing, there are a lot of ways to get in stress relieving, work stress, work at home, stress relieving exercise. Just there are so many videos online. There's so many exercise programs online that you could do in front of your children or with your children. Before I was a member of any of those exercise programs that I'm a member of now that are so great for me as a work at home parent, we just had dance parties with the kids.
Oh, yeah.
And I would get out my weights and I'd be like doing my weights, and it'd be like the chicken dance would be playing, or, some other, the whole Lori Berkner album would be going. And I would just be like doing my weights and exercising, and having those break periods of physical movement. They made the work at home life so much smoother.
Yeah. So that, to tie it back to the theme of this video, or this live, right? Two things. One is you need the physical exercise. It helps you with stress management.
Yep.
The other is, I would really encourage everyone to remember that homeschooling is not just reading books or doing math problems, that education is meant to cover a lot of areas. And that when you take a nature walk, and you're building up to that ability, and you're out in the woods and you're enjoying things, or you're taking an urban hike or whatever you're doing, you're having a sensorial, emotionally fulfilling experience. And you should recognize that that's also part of homeschooling. So if you're homeschooling and you're also working, and then you're like, oh, I have a half hour block here, and you choose to go out and take a walk for that half hour versus, I don't know, sitting and reading something, you're okay, right? I'm not saying you want to replace the reading all the time. You want to do both, and you want to feel okay about what you're doing to get that exercise, not only for the stress relief, but because it's actually really educative. We really thrive with those stimuli, and it's especially true for little ones. Okay, so going on with her story, she says after lunch, the two-year-old goes down for a nap, and my son and I get some alone time so that I can eat lunch, catch up on work, and while the son works on activities. I also use this time to prep dinner. So once she wakes up, the daughter wakes up, we either do yoga or read, and then they start on dinner. And while making dinner, I like this part, we play music to dance around and have some fun. That's just what you were just talking about a minute ago. Right? They can help if they'd like to or not. It's up to them. My daughter normally helps with the dishes and my son with the cooking. Once dad gets home for dinner, we eat together, and then the kids have free play if we cannot get outside. So a lot of outside time. And dad does bath time, and then we play games before bed, normally Zingo or Goldfish. And I love that. Just so much playfulness here. That's so important. I think especially I think especially when we are feel caught between those two worlds of like the serious work world, the thing we're really supposed to focus on, and but we're also doing this homeschooling piece. I think the joyful component, it goes to that idea of like, why would you say walking or going outside for a hike can be a part of the homeschool experience? Because it's about the joy and the experience as well. I mean, that's also learning. So I think I love this focus. I also really love that it focuses on simple things. I think in our culture, we tend to overload children's activities. Like we have just to the max, so super elaborate Christmas traditions or like super highly structured playgrounds or amusement parks that are designed for children and they're going to be over the top stimulation. And I mean, yeah, of course, it's going to take in your mind, but it actually is too much. What children really want is real work and not overly complex things. Like they like simple things that are real to do. It's sure engaging when you give them an app or something, but they can be just as satisfied doing. I don't know. I was looking doing a parts card. Like here's our parts of a frog. Like that can be
Mhm.
just as engaging, or whatever activity, coloring or something like that, can be just as engaging, in fact more engaging, because it's real, than sometimes these very highly structured things. So fun, injecting fun in small ways, really really important.
It is. A lot of times work at home parents will overload their homeschool rooms with stuff,
Yeah.
hoping that if the more activities that they create to keep those little fingers busy, like they even create things called busy, like it's basically busy work,
Yeah, right.
which means like maybe there's a learning purpose there, but the ultimate purpose is to keep them busy and out of your hair.
That's right.
Right. And that's not necessarily wrong. Sometimes you do need to do your own work. But I would say that the Montessori key here is to simplify. Simplify your routine, make it very, very clear. Simplify your toys and your materials, so that your children know what to expect. They know what they are expected to be engaging with
Hmm.
and at what time they're expected to engage in it. They
That's
really
right.
just don't need a whole lot.
Yeah, I think we kind of get into this guilt cycle where we're busy. We know we're busy. We feel, guilty about being busy. We need to do something with the kids, but we can't give them our undivided attention. We just have to get the work done.
Right.
And so we're like, let's give them something nutritious, some nutritious junk food. PBS Kids, there's nothing wrong necessarily with that stuff in small amounts, but
No.
don't fall into the trap where you're like, well, I gave them some nutritious junk food. Like at the end of the day, the kid actually probably needs so much less than what you're imagining to be much more fulfilled. And that's really kind of the watchword. I mean, don't let the advertising fool you. It's
Yep.
easy to do. So on that, kind of wrapping up here, I think we talked about a lot of really interesting ideas for how to try and separate, acknowledging above all that it is hard to do.
Yeah.
But we've talked about, taking moments when you do have the small moments, injecting fun into them, joy, in the way that you interact with your partner or something, or other adults, not being, too purist or rigid. If the support that you have is not Montessori or not completely aligned, it's okay. Like the intention is what matters. Um, what do you think are some big takeaways you would want people to focus on?
Yeah, I guess I want people to know that homeschoolers come within a variety of career backgrounds and interests. So just because you want to be a homeschooler doesn't necessarily mean that you have to leave whatever else you're interested in or what makes you feel purposeful behind. I know that we have that stereotype of the home, usually a homeschool
Yeah.
mom. Yeah, so like we think about the stereotypical family that homeschools in our image, like in our minds, we're thinking dad goes to work every single day, mom leaves whatever career she was doing to come and devote all of her time to the
Yep.
kids, doesn't have any other interests other than homeschooling her children. And they sit at the kitchen table all day doing activities that mom has designed, that mom is currently teaching according to an hourly schedule that she made up.
Right.
Right. And it's like 8 o'clock do this, 8:30 do this. And mom is there the whole time doing the homeschooling. And we have this concept, this idea that that is supposed to be completely fulfilling for every single woman, in the stereotype who wants to be a homeschooler. And the truth is, friends, that that's not necessarily like Montessori can be so fulfilling. I think that
Definitely.
learning Montessori and learning the pedagogy of teaching, that can be fascinating. But the truth is the day-to-day grind of sitting there with your kids, teaching lessons over and over and over, it is work and it is
Yeah,
exhausting. And just because you're doing it does not mean that it's going to fulfill you in every way that you need it to.
that's right.
So it is okay to nourish yourself in whatever your heart desires to be nourished in. And I see, and also for financial reasons, if your family needs you to work and bring in a certain amount of income, then it is okay to do that and homeschool. Most of the homeschool families that we know in real life and that we have known in real life throughout the whole homeschool journey, most of them have working parents.
Absolutely.
And a very small percentage of them have, a parent who is a stay-at-home parent who has no other interest other than
Well,
homeschooling.
that was
Like,
never us, even
yeah,
us. Even before
no,
we started Child of the Redwoods, you were
no.
incredibly
And
busy.
now there are also periods where, I was not making an income.
Oh, but you
And
worked a long time. You worked lots and lots
yes,
of hours
yes.
doing basically kind of volunteer work.
Yeah, yeah, and of desire, of
Absolutely.
desire, or
Meaningful work.
writing, or so we know homeschoolers who are nurses who have a nurse schedule, or an EMT, so they're like on for 3 days a week, 12 hours a day, and then
Yeah.
they're off for like the other
Yeah. And sometimes
four.
their partner might be a firefighter
Mhm.
or also a nurse. And so
Yeah.
they
They kind of
switch
they
back and
switch
forth.
off.
Totally.
We know homeschoolers. I know homeschoolers who are writers, who are also entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
like we are. We know homeschoolers who are doing like accounting type of work
Yep.
from home.
Yep.
Because of the pandemic, I mean, now we know just
Virtual
about,
assistants and
yeah, like
yep.
a lot of people can work from home. So if you desire to work from home, there are a lot of opportunities out there for you. But also don't discount going back to the workplace, wherever your work, is, and figuring out some kind of childcare situation. You can still homeschool part-time. And a lot of families do choose to do that.
Yeah. I think the key is just kind of keeping a separation between your work time and your homeschool time will help you. It's one potential method, right? Like if you have that kind of schedule and you make time for yourself and time for the other homeschooling, it will keep you balanced.
Well, I've noticed that there are two distinct approaches to working from home and homeschooling at the same time. I can't speak for working at the office, but I
Yeah.
can speak for working at home. So parents, depending on your personality type, and probably like your distraction, your level of like how distracted you are,
Multitasking
how
and
much you,
switching costs and all that.
yes, like how comfortable you are with multitasking. Homeschoolers either find that a very rigid, complete separation of like work versus homeschool really works for them, or they take a more integrated approach, which we call a co-working type of
Yeah,
situation,
right.
where
Okay.
like you're working on something, at the same time that your child is doing their work. So maybe they are working on these
Yeah.
frogs parts cards,
Yeah.
and you're sitting there and you're like gonna do a little of your own work. And maybe that's emailing, or maybe that is something tangible. I don't know, maybe you sell stuff on Etsy. Like, I don't know what you do, but like you're both working at the same time. So you're like sitting there with your child in the middle of the floor. You got your work equipment, they
Hmm.
got their work equipment, or you're at a table or
Yep.
whatever, and you're
Dining
like,
table
I'm
or
going to do
something.
my work. What work are you going to do? And you're kind of legitimizing like, hey, it's time for work. Like, I love this kind of work. It's purposeful, and I'm going to do my work.
Yeah.
And
That's
what
great
kind of
modeling.
work are you going to do? Yeah, so you're letting your child witness you working at the
Yeah.
same time. And that also can work for families. I mean, you can do a blend as well. That's also
I
fine.
think this is
But
great. I like what you're saying because I know that I'm definitely of the first category.
mhm,
I do not, as a homeschool dad, and or even when I worked in an office, like I kind of just sort of want to get into the zone and concentrate
yeah,
and want to be fully invested one way or the other. So if it's homeschool time, let's give lessons. If it's work time, I want to be just like working.
right.
And I don't love I don't do well with the
Intersection. Yeah.
intersection. I think you're much better about the co-working style. And you're much more likely to sit and do your work while the children are doing their work. And now that they're older, it's a little easier. But even when they were, especially when they were younger, like having
Mhm.
them do some kind of an activity while you were writing or while you're answering emails or while
Yeah, I
you're,
don't know. You do an integrative approach a lot these days.
hmm,
So maybe it's different because our kids are older too.
maybe,
But
maybe it's a mindset.
I
So I
don't
guess the
know.
answer here is There's no right way.
There's no
The
right
only
way.
answer is like, you can do it. It's okay. Try it. Homeschooling is for everybody.
Yes, and if it's not working, don't give up because there are strategies that you can try to make things work better. All
That's
right?
right. That's
Not
right.
perfect, but better. Well, thank you all for coming today. And thank you so much to Stacy
Stacy.
for sharing your day in the life with us.
That's
If
right.
Stacy's story inspires you to learn more about living a Montessori lifestyle, we've got programs and resources at Child of the Redwoods that can help
That's
you.
right.
All you got to do is head over to our website, childoftheredwoods.com, for more. And we can help you learn about both the foundation of learning and about the rhythm of life. So
Totally.
there's something for everyone. All right.
Yep. And if you have feedback or questions, you can email us at hello@childoftheredwoods.com. You could leave a comment on this video, or you can reach us on Instagram. However you'd like to. We're always happy to chat, and we love reading comments and feedback about the work that we're doing. So
we'll see you next Tuesday at 1:00 p.m. It'll be our next installment of this Child of the Redwoods live series from Montessori 101. We're going to be talking about another one of the Montessori essentials from our essentials list, which you can find on our website.
Did you say it's an essential?
It is an essential.
What essential is it?
It's art supplies.
Art supplies.
Find the full list at childoftheredwoods.com/essentials.
That's right.
See you then.
See you then.